Hey, welcome to the Family Ministry Podcast. We have another great interview in store for you today. Before we jump into that interview, I want to tell you about Ministry Boost membership. Ministry Boost membership is an online platform to help you recruit more volunteers. Who doesn't need more volunteers? And build a thriving family ministry. It's over 50 courses and resources and ministry kits, done for you resources to help you fast forward the development in your ministry. I don't know if you're like me, but there's just not enough time in a week, in a day, in a month to always work on the ministry and help make it better and what we want it to be while we're working in it and getting ready for next Sunday or next Wednesday or whatever that might look like. So check out ministryboost.org and check out the membership where you get access to everything for one low monthly cost. If you have multiple staff at your church that would benefit, there's a price for that as well, and everybody gets to be part of it for one low price. Doesn't even cost as much as 2 users. So if you need to recruit more volunteers, which I think that's probably most of us, if you want to develop your family ministry, check out ministryboost.org. And then the other thing is the Family Ministry Roundtable. This is a new gathering that we're hosting in Dallas, Texas in November 5th and 6th for family ministry teams. So if you're a church where you want kids ministry and youth ministry to work together as one team, this gathering is for you. You're going to come together. We've got some great speakers going to talk about everything that's happening in family ministry, both big picture, like for all of us as one team, but also in preschool, in elementary, preteen, student ministry, next gen pastors, and even some specific topics within there. And then the thing I love the most about it and kind of the idea behind this whole concept is that it's a roundtable event. So we will spend time listening to experts talk about what's working in their church and what's working in their ministry. But you also have time hearing from other churches. What are they doing on the ground? How are you doing this? What is that document? Can I have it? I feel like that's the strength of family ministries, is sharing that kind of information. I know our church has learned so much from other churches. And so I'm looking forward to the Family Ministry Roundtable. Check it out now to get the best price. And we hope to see you in November. Now let's jump in and listen to this week's episode of the podcast. Check out the show notes for all the links and everything else. Hey, well, welcome. I'm excited to interview Jody Livingston. How you doing, Jody?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing well. You got another book out, and we're going to talk about that, Staying Power in Youth Ministry. We got to talk about earlier here, I think, some of the stats that I don't even know if they're true, but before we get into that, like the idea that the average student minister, 10 years, 2.5 years and all this kind of stuff, feels like the one about 80% of students leave. Like these are debated stats that do have some metrics to back them up. But I would say the one about the average student ministry, 10 years, 2.5 years, I don't know where you could get good data for that. But anyway, before we jump into all that, give us an introduction. Tell us about you, what you do, your church, podcast, family, all that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my name's Jody, like you said. This is my 26th year in student ministry, which the gray beard attests to.
Average. You're up in that average.
Yeah, I'm up on the average. That's right. I kind of stumbled into youth ministry. I did not intend to. And so I actually became a youth pastor at a really small church at 18, which I would not advise to anybody. And, 6 lock-ins my first year, Nick. That's how we grew that thing.
Yeah,
if it was fun, we did it, right? If I thought it was fun, we did it. And I didn't get fired. And
I was going to say 6 lock-ins, 18 mad parent emails, and 1 police call,
100%. Now, the police were called a couple times, and there were a lot of hospital visits, but nobody died.
Exactly.
And I didn't get fired.
Yeah, miraculously.
And so I grew up in Tennessee. I was born in Vegas, but grew up in Tennessee. Moved out of high school to Raleigh area, Wake Forest, North Carolina, for Bible college there, and served at a small church, like I said, there for a couple of years. And then they merged with another church. So then I rolled into another role at a church down the street from the school, where I was there 8 years and bivocational for that first 11 years. So,
okay, yeah.
Working as bivocational is always funny to me, because I don't know any bivocational youth minister that's working 2 jobs. most are working multiple jobs trying to make it happen.
Sure.
And then we moved to the Atlanta area to take my first full-time role there, and was there for 9 years. And then we've been here in the sunny desert of Southern California now for 6.5. And, married, 4 kids. My oldest is 22. So I have a 22, 19, 18, and 16-year-old right now.
Yeah, sounds like
so I'm in
expensive. So that's what that
It's
sounds
very
like to me.
expensive. I'm launching them out, man. I can
California,
see
college. I mean, all this sounds really expensive to me. That's what this sounds like. And you're
it
in
is
youth
stupid.
ministry. Yeah.
But we make so much in youth ministry,
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
okay.
So you're fine. Yeah. It's like it's in a
That's
month
right.
you can pay for somebody's college. It's great.
That's right. And then I have a podcast called The Longer Haul in Youth Ministry. I've been doing for, I don't know, 10, 12 years now. And it's been fun just getting to know folks like you and others, trying to encourage people along. And then obviously the book you mentioned, which is kind of born out of a lot of that, right? Podcast started as a blog and wrote for, I think, a couple of years, just blog stuff, and then wanted more to say. And at that time, this is crazy if you're listening now, but at that time, there were no youth ministry podcasts.
Oh, yeah. It's so funny.
And
Do you remember,
so
did you ever follow I've said this before on this podcast, but like Catalyst was doing podcasts for church leaders long before anybody was. And it was good. It was good
great
back then. It was great. Because they get guests that spoke at the conference. So you'd be hearing from Lencioni or whoever, you know what I mean? It was great. Jim Collins. They were doing it for years before anybody. And then eventually, like you're saying, it kind of expanded in other areas, and youth ministry was one of those for sure.
Yeah. And podcasting has gotten easier. It's more accessible. And it's great. Like I'm a fan of podcasters and podcasting. I'm not upset. There's more folks speaking into it. I think we need all the encouragement we get. So
sure. Yeah.
Started the podcast, and then here we are, still going.
Tell us about the book, Staying Power: 10 Essentials for Longevity in Youth Ministry. Hey, your average right now is like 7 years, if I'm doing the math right, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
Like you keep going up, So like you're
funny
doing all
because I think I was telling somebody the other day, it's interesting because my desire has always been to plant and stay. And I've never really sought out an opportunity to leave. And reluctantly have always left. I feel like God has really shaken me loose at every step to get me to the next place. And we've always kind of, as a family, even had this attitude of like our yes on the table and let him put it on the map and see where that leads. My goal was certainly never to move to California. It was never to be at any certain size church or ministry. Like that was never the goal. It was really just to be faithful and see where that led. And so I'm grateful for the journey that we've been on. It's not always been easy, for sure. And some of that's in the book as well. But the book really, so the irony is I set out to write a different book. And this book started as a chapter in that proposal.
Okay.
And as I began writing the chapter, it just kept getting longer and longer and longer. And I thought, well, hey, maybe this is something, let's start here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of youth ministry books out there, and some are really philosophical and some are like really practical. And so it's not like, I don't think there's enough books in the world, but I didn't know of any that was like, hey, here are things, if you really want to make a difference and stay for a long time, like here are like the essential things you got to know, have, be aware of, and run toward. And so that's kind of what happened. Like, how do we distill these things down to really 10 practical things? I feel like even if you listen to the podcast, one of the things that I've always tried to do is make sure that it's whatever we're talking about is really applicable, regardless of your context, where you are regionally, the size of your church, the ethnic makeup of your church, like how long, there are principles that apply across the board. So let's talk about what those are. I think this book does that really well. We worked really hard to make sure that it was that. Tried to keep the chapters short, engaging. I think it's written in a fun way, and I do believe it to be really helpful. It's the thing I've said over and over and over, whether it was the blog, the podcast, now the book, it's all aimed at 18-year-old Jody, who was doing 6 lock-ins a year because he didn't know what else to do, right?
Yeah.
And was reading every book I could get my hands on and going into every youth specialties conference I can afford and sitting in every breakout and just trying stuff. Like what would I have loved to have known then that I now know 26 years in? And I'm still being reminded of even on a daily. So I think even if you're not new, just starting out, there are things that we often forget, right? What are these things that really matter? And so that was kind of the aim and the goal there.
That's great. Before we jump into the book though, let's talk about that stat, that 2.5 year tenure stat or whatever it is, the average youth pastor. I do see, like, in my work with Slingshot, I'm talking to candidates and people all the time. I'm talking to churches. So it's not like I don't see the quick turnover. It's not like I don't
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
the failed experience or whatever. I do see it. It's like, how would I describe it? I would say that like there's a lot of factors that go into those quick turnovers that most churches could easily avoid, I guess is probably the way I
Yeah.
would say
Of
it.
course.
And so it's like, yes, that does happen a lot. I would be hard pressed to think that actually truly is the average, because
Yeah.
it's just not what I see with churches that are doing some of the obvious stuff you should do when you hire, whether it's background
Yeah.
vetting, and your own church is healthy, right? Because that's what that is a dynamic in hiring in church world is both sides are not telling the whole story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're not
Yeah.
telling you how toxic our church might actually be, and you're not telling us, that you actually got let go for that job 3 times ago. So,
Yeah.
but when you get both sides being more honest, both sides being healthy, I mean, that longevity is definitely more than 2.5 years. But what have you seen?
Totally. Well, I think so. There's the stat that I've always heard thrown around is 18 months,
Yes, that's
right?
true. It
Like,
is
or
18
18.
months. That's
And I,
right. It's even less than two and
and
a half
so
years.
I know where that stat came from. So I was in a conversation. I don't know if it was with Ed Stetzer or Marco, one of those. We were in there. So basically what happened is there was a group of youth pastors who knew each other, and they were like just kind of talking, and they just decided that they thought the average was about 18 months. And so they started talking about it. And then that kind of bled out everywhere, right? There's no data to support 18 months. It was literally like, what do you think? What do you think?
Yeah.
Probably about 18 months, right? And that's
Yeah.
kind of that's where it came from. And they actually knew the guys who came up with that, which was amazing. I mean, my guess is, I really think it's probably around 2.5 to 3 years.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you why. I think I know why too. And I talk a little bit about this is in the book. I'm not trying to plug the book by saying this, but I do talk about this in the book. I think if you just think through seasons of ministry, right? And this is really important for us to understand. Your first 6 months someplace, and there's great books like your first 2 years in youth ministry, your first 100 days and beyond, like those books talk about some of the stuff. But your first 6 months, you don't know what you're doing. You're trying to figure out where the grocery store is, where to get gas, whose names who does what, how do you get this check for that, where's your office, like how do you really get into your email, all those things. Then the back half, that first year, you kind of get into the first year, you got your feet under you a little bit. Now you kind of have an idea of what you want to do. You're kind of going to start making some changes probably at that point. And then you hit year 2, right? And 2 years in, like even to your point, Nick, like the expectations are no longer a guess, right? Like all of a sudden now the unwritten expectations that you had for me that you didn't say, and the said expectations I had that I never said, I now know. So things got real. And I, it sounds a bit sacrilegious. I think you can do youth ministry for about 2 years without Jesus. Like, I think you can do enough, you can buy enough games from, wherever, you can recycle enough messages, you can do enough pizza, you can do enough events, you can fake it for about 2 years, but 2 years in, you're really known. To some level, you're known. They know you, you know them. And then I am convinced, man, and I've watched this in my own life. I mean, talked to thousands of youth pastors about this, that somewhere around 2.5 to 3 years, the wheels fall off. Everything hits the fan. There's a crisis. There's a moment of crisis. And it could be, that first church I mentioned at 18, they merged with another church. They didn't need a youth pastor anymore. That was it for me. It was what it was, right? The second church that I served at, we had pastoral transition. And there was a season there of, am I going to get fired or am I going to quit first? Like just learning what a new leader is like and how do you navigate that? In Georgia, we had a massive blow up with a couple volunteers that we were trying to navigate. One of them was the pastor's wife, right? Like those kind of things. Here, it was COVID, right? Like,
sure.
It's different every time, but I think there's a challenge there and it's coming. And I'm telling you, if you're listening and you're not yet to 2.5 to 3 years, circle it because it's coming. And I don't think this is unique to youth ministry, but I think it felt very clearly in youth ministry. And what happens is when that moment comes, all of a sudden you start looking around and you go, well, boy, I could go somewhere else. It's this church. It's these people. It's it's my budget. It's my facility. It's this town. It's this whatever. And you'll leave and you'll go somewhere else. And because even though churches would love for people to stay, we certainly have no problem hiring people who have been 2.5. And so I talk to youth pastors all the time. They're like, I got 10 years of youth ministry experience. but really it's 2 over and over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not the same, because
And 2
here's
or
the thing.
3 is enough that a church is like not scared off, right? Like
Right,
1
right.
year, year and a half. You're like,
2 or
what
3 like,
happened
oh,
there?
you've done some stuff, man.
2 to
But
3,
here's the
you're like,
thing.
it's not a long tenure, but and
Yeah.
especially if you're taking them, like if you feel like they
Yeah.
weren't looking or
Right.
they didn't lose their job, they're still there. You're not
Then
scared
you're
off by
great.
2 to 3 years. You are scared off by a year.
But you grow more from year 3 to year 5 than you will in your entirety of your ministry. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah.
That you learn maybe how to be a youth pastor at wherever in the first 2.5 to 3, but from 3 to 5, you grow to be the leader you need to be to lead beyond. And that 3-year cycle happens over and over and over and over. But the longer you sit in a place, the easier it becomes to weather those storms. You have more relational depth. You have more awareness of the expectations. You're able, like, you have earned more trust.
Yeah.
Like, you're able to navigate those difficulties. And so you're able to stay longer, but it's going to come. And I don't know why it is, but I'm convinced it is. And this is the book that I set out to write. Let's talk about these seasons, right? And so, like, what do we need to do for that? Well, we need to recognize they're coming and not leave and take the exit ramp the first thing that comes. Know that if I push past this and I can get to year 5, man, I've grown by year 5. Because my games that I recycled in my messages from the first 2 years, I can't use those anymore. Now I got to write my own. And 5 years in, I can't blame the last guy for all my problems.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Now they're mine. I've built them. Nobody's comparing me to the last guy anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody's comparing me to the last girl. Like, she's gone. It's me. It's my world that I've built and created. And what does that look like now going forward? And so I do think it's somewhere around 3. It might be longer than 2.5, but I think it's about 3, because I just think when that difficulty comes, most people leave.
This may not be interesting to anybody but me, but we'll see. There was something that I always thought was interesting. Speaking of, you and I were talking about podcasts and, the origin of the podcasts, and Carey Nieuwhof obviously was the pioneer in the church leadership, senior leadership space. And years ago he had on, I'm probably going to get this wrong, Judah Smith, I think it was Judah Smith, who succeeded the other guy that I'm not going to think of his name right now. And in the interview, he was asked about that, the succession of that, and like, you're taking over a big church with a guy that had been there before. And he named another guy whose name I should know because I did a Strat Up training with him a couple years after that interview. And anyway, that guy had told him, he went to him for advice. Like, I'm coming in, it's a major transition. You got the guy who built it, so to speak, and now I'm following him. And he told Judah, like, 2 years. Like, you're going to get a 2-year runway before your elders start leaving and core families start leaving and staff start leaving. So there's like a honeymoon in a sense where it's like, no, unless you blow it up or something, like, you're going to be fine because people will give you a year or 2. And he was like, he was right. Like, the guy was right. It was 2 years in. And it shocked him, even though that guy told him, it still was surprised. Like, so I wonder if part of it's that too, that there's this 2-year honeymoon where, people give you a chance. There's more longer leash, so to speak, or whatever. But then by 2 years in, they know, like, the honeymoon phase is over. And it's like, now they know if they like you or not, the relationships, if they agree with the direction or not. You've probably,
can you live with their mess? Can they live with yours?
Your opinion's been shared enough. Now they know what you really want to do with this thing, so that would make sense from that perspective.
I think if you've done a really good job of not, like, there's things, right? It doesn't matter how people feel about the person who was before you. You don't trash them, right? You build on what they did. You lay clear vision from the start, and you lead through that vision so that by the time you hit that year 2, year 3, people know the direction they're running. You're not waiting until then to start telling them, but you're slowly dripping it. You're winning people. You're creating a culture that will outlast you. It's a culture, not a ministry that you're building. And that really does help that transition. How many people are you getting buy-in from early into that vision? And then it's just you're still fighting something. There's still something coming, but it's less of an uphill battle.
I'm making a note because we were just talking about how we don't know, like, there's not great stats on the tenure. We've done we've done a survey before that's a staff and ratio survey, and we don't ask that question. I think now, again, people could, whenever I'm like a data guy and I know how hard it is to do surveys that get everybody to give you the same like apples to apples answer. But I think
Yeah.
that's a question we could ask that we've never asked before. It's a simple question, you know, like what is your average tenure? If you
Yep.
take your churches divided by the years and all those things. And there's also we're working on another one now with Slingshot where we could ask it in there too. So maybe I'll do it. I'd be interested to see, because my work with Slingshot, especially with churches that we've played, like where I've placed candidates, it's definitely higher. The average has to be higher than, 2.5 or certainly 18 months, because I don't have a lot of people leaving under 3 years, so
and you
got people that
you're
are staying
being honest,
10.
right? You're pushing on both sides for clarity of expectations.
That's true. And part of it is too,
helpful.
if you hire Slingshot, you have now exposed yourself to another organization who's going to tell you things that might be not, that you might need to fix, or this is an issue with you. You know what I mean? There's like that middle person. It's like the agent in a negotiation. It's like, you can't lie. It's hard to lie to everybody. And it's not the churches lie. It's just they don't come in thinking, I mean, some churches do lie for sure. Just like candidates do lie.
Yeah.
But in my experience, that's not a lot of what I experience. What I experience a lot of is like, here's what a church would do. That is an issue. We feel like it's not an issue anymore. And then the new person comes in and they're like, oh, it's still an issue.
Yeah, it's still
like
an issue.
You don't notice it because of your seat or whatever.
Yeah,
or
what is it? Time in, erodes awareness of.
It was this terrible before, and now it's way better, but it's still, not great.
Yeah.
Same with a candidate. Candidate might, not talk about something that they don't think is a big deal. And the church is like, oh my gosh, that's a huge deal. So there's a little bit of that. But having that third party does mitigate that.
What happens sometimes is, depending on how a church hires, right? So larger churches may just hire, so you get somebody hiring or a few group, or they might use an agency. But sometimes smaller churches will hire through a search team, right?
Yeah.
A committee.
Yes. I was on 2 of those in my lifetime.
Yeah. So here's what I think happens in those cases, as often a church will put people on that search committee or search team who are really passionate about whatever role they're hiring. So if you're hiring a student ministry role, for example, they're going to put people who love and are passionate about student ministry. And they're going to ask a bunch of great questions. As the candidate, you're asking great questions. You might actually have incredible clarity on what the committee expects and wants. And they might have great clarity on what you expect and want. But they're not speaking for the church as a whole.
Yeah.
Because this is the dream team of people.
Yes, that's right.
So
it's like we got the best of the,
yeah. So you get in there, you get hired, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait a minute, the committee, they weren't lying.
Yeah.
But they were speaking for themselves.
Yeah.
They were not necessarily giving me an accurate representation of the whole of the church. And so you get in.
Even if they represent 60 or 70%, there's still that other 30 or 40 that is called.
And that other 30, 40 is loud, right?
Exactly. I tell churches, because with Slingshot, I'll work with churches that have search teams. And I always tell the staff, I served in one, so I feel like I can speak to this honestly from both sides of the thing. Most search teams are more overly cautious, I guess is probably the term I would use, like what you want to be. But and they don't know the market. So I don't even know if I should say this out loud on a podcast, but there's search teams are even more likely to think they can afford the yacht when really they can get the pontoon boat, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas the church staff wants that a little bit too, but they're not as extreme in there. And afford's not even the right word, because it's not even usually about money, but it's usually about who you're going to get. Even especially in this market today, where there's far more churches looking for kids and student pastors than there are kids and student pastors out there. So, a church used to think, oh, we're going to go get somebody who's done this at our level to come here. Not
every job description is the same, right? They want someone young and energetic.
I need 30
years old,
with
15 years of experience.
Exactly. Yeah. Not too many though. So 10. We'll go 10.
Charismatic, great communicator, but high relationally, really organized, creative. Can play guitar, run sound, help with their website, manage their social media.
Exactly. And part of it's and staff do this too, but it's just that search teams are more like that because they're more unaware of what reality would be, right? And there's a sense of again, I shouldn't say this out loud, but it's like if your church is a 7 out of 10, you're probably getting a 6 or a 7 or a 5. However you want to grade that. Quality, experience, whatever. And if you're a 10 out of 10, which I don't even know what that would be, because churches, that's where this analogy breaks down, because there's no one good church, right? There's no
Yeah.
quality of like, it's got to look like this. But you know what I mean? Like what you're going, health,
Yeah,
maybe
for
health is
sure.
the way to think. Health and experience. I guess that'd probably be if I'm using a scale, let's scale it about health and
Yeah.
experience and like, predictability. Like if that is the scale, a church that's a 7 in health and predictability and unity and all that wants a 7 or 8 or 9, and it's like that's not usually how it goes. A lot of times you're going to have to
Yeah.
get a 5 or 6 and be okay that you're bringing them up,
Yeah.
to your level. Now, if your church is really healthy and has lots of established consistency and reliability and all that, and you're a 9 or 10, yeah, you could probably, because it's kind of like speaking of Carey Nieuwhof again, he would talk about how healthy cultures repel toxic people. Well, that's even true on a smaller scale. Like, don't use the word toxic because that's pretty extreme. But
Yeah.
if a church is healthy and a candidate's healthy, they recognize each other. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? And if a candidate is experienced and solid, then a church is, consistent and unified, they see
Well,
that.
you learn what to ask. You learn what to look for. You get better at reading a room.
Yeah.
Right. All those
How
things.
how much of that have you talked, is that in the book? Like, I want to dive into some of the sections of the book, but do you talk about vetting the church? Because that is something that I don't know a lot of people would have done well 20 years ago for sure. Because like you're just trying to get a job. Now the market, at least in kids and student ministry, it has shifted to where churches are hurting because there's not enough candidates out there, and candidates can do more of this right here. They can vet. They're vetting you as much as you're vetting them, if not more, right?
Yeah. So there's a chapter in the book called "Be Clear in Your Expectations," because I'm not very creative, so that's where it is. And I actually will talk through what that looks like, and even how that, like, not just church wise, but your own. I talk about it. I give an example of my wife and I. I mean, our marriage almost imploded when I took that full-time role, because we just had bad expectations, unrealistic expectations of what full-time ministry would be versus what I had been doing.
Yeah.
And I was not doing well at managing things. But then even in that, like, okay, what should you be asking in an interview, or what should you be thinking about? And so I give a few questions in there that I always recommend to folks in terms of what I would ask, what I would look for. I know not everyone who reads the book is going to be looking for a job, and the hope is that they wouldn't look for a job, but like that they would just be able to stay and be planted. But I know that's not, I mean, even my own story is not that. I would love to have planted one place and stayed for 26 years. And I would have. I mean, I wasn't running in any of those situations. I think I talk about in the book, you should never want to leave. It should always be hard to leave. You can be excited about where you're going, but you should always grieve the loss of leaving.
Yeah.
And so, like, on the flip side, so I have in that chapter, here's some things to walk through: how to manage expectations, what to be mindful of personally, family expectations, church-wise. And then in the appendix of the book, I actually give you 7 reasons you should leave your church, which I know is counter to probably the book.
But that's because that's a reality, right? That's helpful to talk about both sides. Yeah.
Yep.
Who was
nobody
it?
talks about that.
Man, I'm not sure who had that quote that like leaving a church should be like divorce. I don't agree with that, but I do get, like, the extremes are bad, I guess. Like, I don't think leaving a church should be like a divorce, in a sense that like that's that rare, that painful, and I don't know that it's like that. I also don't think it's like flavor of the month, because I know in our culture now, gig economy, like it's, we're old enough that our parents and people even our generation did the same job for 3-4 decades.
Yeah.
Now we're in a thing where it's like, 2-3 years changing jobs is very normal. Changing a major 7 times in college is very normal. So,
and expensive.
Expensive. Yeah. I don't know that the extremes are good, but both are reality. I mean, I remember sitting at a conference years ago for church leadership where I had already had that moment of like, hey, I've only been in 2 churches my whole life. I love my home church, but there was a reality. The short version of the story is that I knew my home church was never going to adapt to be the kind of church that would reach people who are not a part of any church. We were always going to be church for our church people that wanted our things our way, the way we did it, right? And once I knew that, leaving was like easier. As like, we're going to go help a church plant, and then here I am. Our church plant will now turn 20 years old next year. But I remember sitting at a conference like a year later or 2 years later, and my wife and I were there, and some lady was sitting next to us. She's crying. I mean, just because of what's being said. I don't even remember what was being said, but I think she was in this moment of like feeling stuck, but feeling that weight of like this unspoken thing that you can't leave your church. That's like divorce. It might be
Yeah.
Tony Campolo that said that, by the way. I can't remember. But part of me is like, I was to a point where in my life where I thought, and right or wrong, I thought, yeah, I don't agree with that. I feel like you have one life. God's kingdom is big. God's church is big. Do not pick another church just because you like that one song more, or the website looks a little better, or you know what I mean? Like for these weird, dumb reasons.
Yeah.
But if you theologically and your mission and your strategy, if that's more aligned somewhere else and you're gonna be leveraged more by God in that setting, please do. Please take that jump. So I don't know, it's both. So I'm glad you put that in there. What are a couple of the things you said? Like, what are a couple of the, like, yeah, you should leave?
Yeah.
Theology?
So I think theology is, vision, I think, is always a big one.
And vision's broad because there's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like vision, like
for
I think of
sure.
my church, where our church is definitely about reaching people who are not a part of any church. That's how we'd say it. So, and we even talk about, like, if you come from another church and you want it a certain way and it's not that way, it's not going to be great. But then, and that's big picture. Like, you have to agree with that. We're going to be a church that's going to care a lot about people that aren't here, and that's going to determine how we say things and what we do and don't do. But there's also a small vision. Like, I can't even think of a good example here.
Yeah,
Like,
and
we don't have this in the lobby.
In the book, I talk about leading from vision, and I kind of define that for the sake in the context of the book, because I feel like everybody misuses. In my opinion, this is Jody's opinion, we use interchangeably often mission and vision.
We do.
They're not the same.
That's great.
Okay,
so
that's
how would you say it? Like, how do you?
I think we're all called to the same mission, right? I think the Great Commission is pretty clear. We're all called to the same mission. I think vision is how we uniquely accomplish that mission. And then you're going to have, in student ministry, your church is going to have an overarching vision. They may not have it on the wall, and it may not be articulated, but they have one.
Yeah, they might not even know what it is. They
may
can't describe it, but it is happening.
And it might be terrible, right? And it might not be helpful, and it might not accomplish much, but they're running towards something.
Yeah.
And then we have to be mindful to be able to recognize what that is, and then not create a separate one. But how does my vision in my student ministry for how we'll accomplish the greater vision, which ultimately accomplishes the greater mission, how does that align? Otherwise, we'll be in trouble, right? So, and it's going to look different. And I give some practical examples in the book, but like, if your church is really community driven and not missional in terms of global missions, and you're just not really serving locally, but trying to take all these global mission trips, that's going to be frustrating.
Oh yeah, sure.
Or opposite, right? Sometimes if your church is exegetical and you're always preaching topical, you might have some tensions there, or vice versa. So some of it comes down to, I think your vision drives your philosophy. You should be recruiting on your vision. You should be, which, I talk a lot about that in that chapter. I think, in terms of the reasons to leave, obviously, if they ask you to leave, you should go, which feels obvious. But Nick, you and I have done this long enough to know that some people are like, I'm not leaving.
Oh yeah, they dig their heels in. I've seen this.
Firing me. If you're asking me to leave, you're going to have to get up in front of the church and it's like, bro, what are you?
They stir up trouble. Oh yeah, they start garnering
way
support.
To implode everything you've just built, just go. I mean, I think if your health is an issue, that's a problem. If your health is suffering, and I don't mean like, oh, I'm getting headaches a lot, or I'm really stressed. Ministry is stressful. Yep. But if there's a serious health concern or mental health issue, you got to take care of that. And you got to get out of there. Like if your spiritual walk is a disaster for an extended period, not a dry season. I don't mean a dry season.
Yeah, that's common.
I mean, like, you're not, there's no desire to run towards the Lord. You're peddling a message you don't care about anymore. That's a problem. You got to get out of there. If you mess up and fall morally, which obviously usually comes out of that spiritual issue or lack of, if your family is at risk, and I want to be clear on this one. There's a chapter in the book where I talk about fighting for health and not balance, because we talk so much in ministry about balancing family and ministry. And I remember being in Bible college and people saying like, I'm not putting my family on the altar for ministry. Yeah. That sounds so great. Wow. Yeah. But Abraham did. Yeah. So what do you do with that? I think when we fight for balance, we lose every time. And so, because we will all, and this is going to sound, let me finish this thought before you stop listening. If you're listening to this, everyone I know who's walked away from ministry when they talk about balance, they walk away because they feel like their family is taking a backseat to ministry, and they don't want to see that happen.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that when God calls someone into ministry, it's a family deal, and it's best done when the family's involved. That can look different in every way.
Yeah.
But my family has been very much a part of what I've done. So when we talk about it as terms of balance, you always lose because there is no balance, right? There is no balance. When we say I'm balancing my family and ministry, what we're really saying is I'm going to value my family over everything else. And I think when we do that, we run the risk of often kind of minimizing the calling in our life. So when I say fight for health, what I'm saying is there are seasons in life where your family is going to really need you to show up, and you better run towards your family and make sure your family is healthy. But there are seasons when your ministry really needs you, and you better run towards your ministry or you're going to lose it too. There's no balance, right? Like I know in student ministry, summer is crazy.
Yeah.
I know that. We're going to run 100 miles an hour towards everything. I know once the school year starts, it's going to be crazy. But then like around Christmas, kind of slows down.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Right? So I need to be mindful in those seasons that I'm leaning into my family. And if I'm going to be gone for a camp, if I'm going away for a camp or mission trip, then before or after, I better lean into my family and compensate for that. And so I think sometimes your family can legitimately be at risk, right? If your marriage is falling apart, if your kid, if that's legitimately happening, not because you're choosing that as the exit ramp, then you need to step away and you need to get your family healthy, and then maybe you can come back. And then I think sometimes God genuinely calls you away. I think that's been true in my life. We wanted to, everywhere we've left, we wanted desperately to stay. And I can say that with every bit of honesty. And then the last thing I'd say is just maybe you realize you weren't really called to student ministry after all.
Sure.
Like you just thought you thought it was fun. You had a great experience of your own self. You jumped into youth ministry thinking this is what you do with your life, and you get in there and you're like, yeah, this is not it. Then you got to get out, because staying at that point doesn't help you. It doesn't help them. And it doesn't mean you just abandon ship, but I think it's easy to find reasons to leave, but I don't think we usually have good ones.
No, that's true. I mean, I grew up in a Baptist church where people would come and go because God called them to whatever place.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was true sometimes. And sometimes I was like, oh, the weather's just bad,
Totally.
or your family lives there, or they're paying more.
Yeah. God
Which
gets
isn't
a lot
exactly,
of,
I'm not saying that's bad either, but like, I just wouldn't call it calling. Sometimes,
no, he gets a lot of blame for things, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, use your brain too. Like God gave you a brain. We were talking about earlier, the expectations, like use your brain, be smart, be wise. Don't step into God may call you into crazy, but he probably won't, he probably won't. When I got to the church that I was at in Georgia, I was the 5th youth pastor the senior class had.
Oh,
and there are a couple of interim folks in that 5, but like it was chaos. Nobody trusted me to do anything.
Sure.
I literally had a student. I was asking
one
of the students
a couple of 3 years or something like that, I would think.
I was asking somebody, hey, could you help me? One of the high school seniors, like, could you help me with this event? Because everybody said, oh man, she loves planning events. And she said, no, you're going to leave like everybody else, and I don't want to give you the time.
Ain't that heartbreaking? Ouch. I've worked with 2 churches with Slingshot. One where it was every 2 years for 10 years. Yeah. And 2, I mean, I know 2 of them because this is local to me. And the 2 that I know were at the church before they took the job, and then something else came along. Both of them actually ended up working. The one took over his dad's, it's not a business, but his dad's job at a business. After his dad, they came to him. And then the other one started working for a family-run business in the church. And so, neither of them even intended to leave. And then they had a couple duds in there or whatever. But when I was interviewing, when we engaged with the church, we always talk to volunteers and staff. Well, they had a student leadership team that I got to meet with, and it was heartbreaking. I mean, one of the girls that was a senior, it was the same story. Like, I've had, 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, and just don't trust that that's ever going to change or anybody's ever going to stick. Just when you feel like you connect with them long enough, they're gone. And it was heartbreaking. And of course it's early now. The person that I helped get hired, there's only been there a year, but he's from this area. Like, I have high hopes that the younger generations after her are not going to experience
Yeah.
that for the first time in a decade. And there's even a
Yeah.
church, a different church that I work with, where they have like, it's not the lead youth pastor, but it's associates. They intentionally, um, previously they intentionally turned them over every 2 years. Now, it
Hmm.
was with the right heart of like, we don't want you to just have to be stuck in this associate student ministry role. We want you to go lead your own thing, which is a great
Yeah.
missional mindset as a church. But what I learned, this is one of those, I show up as the third party. I know something now that you didn't realize as big a deal as you thought it was. And the thing that was a big deal is this 2 year thing is a big deal. Students
Yeah.
don't connect with them on purpose. They know they're not going to be here long, so they don't rely on them as much. Leaders understand that they have a role to play, but they're just going to come and go. Like,
Yep.
like you had 10th graders telling you, oh yeah, I don't really connect with the associates because they, they
Yeah.
leave every 2 years.
They're
It's
not going to
like,
stay.
and I don't think the church realized how much that was not working, with
Right.
the students. So, and that's where you got to trade. It's the trade-off, right? Like you want to be a sending
Yeah.
church that empowers people to go to their next step, but you also don't want to like, I don't know, have this turnstile of leaders that students then can't connect to. So,
And there's a way to do that. If that's your philosophy and your vision, there's a way to do that that doesn't feel abrupt. That feels like more like a handoff, right? It takes more intentionality than we often give. And I think
and
it's
maybe
by
getting the
building
students behind that too. I don't know, like maybe that's hard when you're a teenager. How do you
yeah,
think more outwardly like that? But like from the
yeah,
beginning, they know we're helping them get a global mindset. You one day could be one of these
yeah,
associates that is serving and then going to, whereas I felt like this in this culture, maybe they did do that. I don't know, but I feel like that was not the perception. It was more like, well, you never know; they're not going to be here long, and so and
it,
even a couple of the associates got hired not knowing it was a 2 year thing, and so it's like,
yeah, that's
yeah,
bad.
we
That's bad.
probably need to talk about this more. You know what I mean? Like so that we're on the same page.
Well, and that's why your volunteer teams are so important,
Uh-huh.
right? Because you think of like even that church where I was talking about, I was their fifth youth pastor.
Yeah,
They had a great group of volunteers who
sure.
had honestly, most of them hung on because they saw such an inconsistency of leaders, but there was just no consistency of vision or direction.
Yeah.
And so what does it look like then to get there early and
And that's part of what you
cast
write
a
about in
clear
the
vision?
book is building the team.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta have a team.
It's funny because it's like that's helpful in both ways. It's helpful because you're going to be there a long time. That's how
Yep.
you don't get yourself
Yeah.
burnt out and it doesn't all depend on
Yep.
you. But it's also how you build it well for the time you do leave. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
building
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
team. Like
Yeah.
my church was started by our pastor was a youth pastor at the church up north for 13 years. What he built, I mean, it was so healthy. They could have had, I mean, this was a large student ministry too, 300 students. They could have let that run with volunteers, I bet, for 2 years. And you
Yeah.
wouldn't be in because it was so healthy and so well built. It could have probably gone 2 years if they needed to without staff. It did go 2 years with only a third of the staff it had and still
Wow.
ran, just like clockwork for at least 2 years, maybe three, because of building the team and how important that is. Let me wrap up with this.
Yeah.
I feel like half of the book is about personal, which makes sense.
Yep.
It's you, it's your calling, it's your salvation, it's your rhythms. You talked a little bit about that,
Yep.
your personal walk, your expectations. And then not as much is like what that means, like the team and the vision and the communication, all that
Right.
kind of stuff. Is that how you thought you'd go into it? Like speak a little bit to the personal versus the
Yeah.
practical part of
Well,
it.
I think going back to what we were saying earlier, the how we do ministry is the easiest part. Like you can kind of dink around long enough, figure that out. It's the personal stuff that kills us. It's the personal stuff that gets us off the rails, and that man tries to tell us that there's something better out there, or that causes us to step into a moral failure, or causes our family to implode, or if I can get those foundational things, if personally, because what I genuinely believe is that healthy ministry, whether we're talking vocationally, student ministry, any outside, is always going to be done as an overflow of our personal life and heart. If you give me somebody who is genuinely pursuing the Lord, walking in their faith well, studying the Word, not because they have to teach it this week, sharing their faith actively, I think everything else falls in place easier. And so when you back away and you look and you've had more conversations with guys than I have, I'm sure, and folks. I talk to a guy or girl who steps away from a position or is looking for someplace else, and I start having a real conversation. Or if I'm in a coaching call with somebody, you realize, yeah, your issue isn't necessarily that you need to be more organized, although you do, or you need to figure out how to run this event, although you do. It's that you are not healthy. Like there's something wrong here. Let's back up and start. And how do we figure out what it looks like to get you to a place where you're healthy, or at the very least, you have the confidence that you need to lead. So if I can come in, I'm confident in, I'm certain in my salvation. I'm confident in my calling. I know I'm walking with healthy rhythms. My expectations are clear. Like that sets me up then to be able to step in and lead from a clear vision, build a strong team around a clear vision. And, even in that, like you were talking about the practical nature of interview questions. Like I have a whole thing there that if you're sitting here and you're like, I don't know how to build a team or who to recruit, or I can't find volunteers because my church is too small or too big. Like I literally will walk you through a thing I do in coaching calls where I'm like, okay, here's how we do it. Here's how you identify the areas to get volunteers and how you find them. Mm-hmm. I can't do that though if I'm not relationally healthy. Right. And so I think when I look at seasons of ministry over the last 26 years where I really struggled, it was never because I didn't know what to do or how to do what I was doing. If I didn't know, I'd ask somebody, or I'd make something up, or I'd go find a book, or now you could listen to a podcast or find a YouTube video. It was always my personal side that was struggling. And so it wasn't intentional. It just kind of happened as I was thinking through, okay, what are the things that I think are necessary and essential for somebody to stay in ministry and stay in youth ministry for a long time? And the order is intentional. As you go throughout the chapters, my hope was that they would build on each other as you get to the end. And then I end, the kind of the last chapter is, or the conclusion, chapter nobody will read, but everybody should. And it's just these little proverbial kind of bites of wisdom that I would probably share with, you or a listener if we were having coffee somewhere.
Yeah. I was thinking that it seemed ordered intentionally because the you part's first. Then you're getting to your leadership, and then you're getting to the commitment. And there's a part, I'm like a systems process type of thinker. And so I even thought the order that you have it in, this is going to terribly dumb down the idea of it, but it's almost like a checklist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, you could almost like, how am I doing here as I read this chapter? Do some kind of inventory on that. If I feel good about that, okay, the next chapter, how's my personal walk?
Yep.
It's, you know what I mean? Where it's almost like, I would almost encourage people to read it more like a personal development plan.
Yeah.
I guess maybe would be the way to say it. Sure, read it in one setting and just take it all in. That's great. But like over 6 months or a year, how do you read a chapter, slowly apply? Like even because you might get to like your personal walk and you feel great about that. Like we're all in these ups and down seasons, but you might be in a spot where like, no, that's great. I'm spending a week. I read the chapter. I'm on to the healthy rhythms. But then healthy rhythms all of a sudden hit you. And you're like, let me take a month to try some things, that he's talking about here. And then you feel good. It's like, okay, now I'm moving on to expectations. I feel like that would be a great approach for people to work through it.
Yeah.
In a way.
And that was the hope. I wanted to write something that was like a one and done, right? Like if it's essential, it should be something we revisit. And like I was literally telling my wife the other day, like the last 3 or 4 months, I have gone back to what I've written and been encouraging my own self.
Sure.
Such a weird thing.
No,
I'm like, that's right, man. I'm reminding myself of my own things.
Yeah.
And things that I tell others. The hope is, again, I wanted it short. I didn't want somebody there's enough long books out there. I don't want something you slog through.
Yeah.
Something easy to read, something super helpful. I did think of it as a bit of a checklist. Like, and I say like chapter 1, be certain of your salvation. It's easy to skip that chapter.
Sure.
Because you're like, oh yeah, I'm saved. And Nick, how many times have you been at a summer camp and watched a youth pastor get saved?
Yeah.
Right. Like it just happens too much. And so and even if you are clear and certain about that salvation, there's a value to me sitting down and reflecting on it, on what God has done to save me, of the beauty of his rescue in my life, that he has pursued me in spite of me and done for me what I could not do for myself. And that is what he is trying to do through me now in the lives of the students that I'm serving. And so in the introduction, I really encourage folks not to skip chapters because you think, oh, I got it. At least your first time through, right? Once you read through once,
sure.
and if you've got to go back and revisit, and then go for it. But yeah, to me, it was a bit of a checklist, without making a checklist. And
personal inventory, development plan,
that's right.
All those things are good.
Yeah.
And the best leaders, I mean, that's one of the points you make in there is that you want to be learning, constant in your learning. This is a good example of that. Like, take this.
Yeah.
Don't just learn it though, but obviously apply it. Well, where can people get the book?
Yeah. So longerhaul.com is kind of a place for everything, podcast, book-wise. If you go to longerhaul.com/stayingpower, you can find it there. It's on Amazon. It's on Lifeway. It's on Christian Book as well. So you can go straight there if you want. There's a couple bonuses that I have for folks. So if you order the book and you email me the copy of the receipt at book@thelongerhaul.com, I got a couple digital download bonuses there. I'll give you. One's a 30-day devotional written just for youth ministers. The other is kind of a collection of liturgies for us, for youth ministers that kind of walk us through different moments or seasons of things that we're leading. And again, trying to be encouraging and helping come alongside healthy rhythms, spiritual walk, right? Those kind of things. So yeah, I'd love for folks to check it out. It's great. Obviously, the podcast is there too, but longerhaul.com is kind of the one-stop shop for everything.
Great. Awesome. Well, Jody, thanks for coming on the podcast to talk about that. Thanks for writing the book. I'm sure there's more to come. Now you can get back to like what the other book was going to be.
The other one. That's
you can back up and do another chapter of that. But thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for all you do, dude. Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Check out the show notes for all the links and notes and resources. And don't forget to sign up for the Family Ministry Roundtable happening this fall, November 5th and 6th in Dallas. It's designed for family ministry teams. So bring your kids staff, youth ministry staff, whether that's you and the kids pastor, you and the student pastor, or maybe you have a larger team with multiple staff in different areas. The Family Ministry Roundtable was designed for you to come and learn from top next-gen voices and other churches, and we want to learn from your church. So we hope to see you there. Register now to get the best price, and check out Ministry Boost membership for you and your staff. It could be for your entire church staff. If you need to recruit more volunteers, train volunteers, implement volunteer coaches, work on different areas of your ministry, the Ministry Boost membership gives you access to everything we have, over 50 courses, resources, bundles, ministry kits, things like that you can use so you don't have to start from scratch as you develop your ministry. Check out ministryboost.org/membership, and I'll catch you in the next episode of the Family Ministry Podcast.